Hello, everyone. My name is Olivia. I'm 47 years old, and this is one of the most unbelievable stories I've ever experienced. Even now, I'm not entirely sure how I feel about it, but I can't stop replaying the events in my mind.
She owned 22 cats and frequently brought in strays without providing them with any veterinary care. She even planned to keep a newly born litter. I adore cats, but this was too much. While she went to the restroom, I paid my tab and hurriedly left. I forwarded her details and a summary of her actions to the Humane Society. I went to meet my blind date. She opened the door, took one look at me, and said, "You?" I replied, "Yeah, same," turned around and left. The entire interaction lasted less than 5 minutes. I went on a first date with a girl who insisted on dining at an upscale restaurant. She ordered a $25 appetizer, a $45 steak, and a $15 drink. Throughout the meal, she barely acknowledged me, constantly taking calls and responding to messages on her phone. The waitress noticed my discomfort and discreetly motioned for me to follow her. She had already prepared separate bills and asked if I'd like to settle mine and leave. I gratefully accepted her offer and left my date at the table. My grandparents set me up on a blind date, so out of love and respect for them, especially my granddad, I agreed to go. We met at a bar where my best friend worked. While I was chatting with my friend, my date said, "Is this gay guy trying to hit on you?" First, my friend isn't gay. Second, it wouldn't matter if he were. Third, he was just checking in on me. I was already over it, but my ride wasn't coming for another hour. Then his friend arrived and started flirting with me in a sleazy way. My date, meanwhile, asked if I could call some of my hot friends to join us. I replied, "I like my friends, so no." He then began making racist remarks about Pacific Islanders and insulting a German guy who was just enjoying a drink. When my ride finally arrived, I said, "I'm leaving." He replied, "I've got a big duck. You should come home with me." I responded, "Thanks, but I'd rather gouge out my eyes." The next day, he messaged me saying, "You probably think I'm a bit of a cut after last night, but do you want to go out again?" I had zero interest, so I explained why his behavior was unacceptable and suggested he make female friends to learn to see women as more than objects. I also told my grandparents everything. They passed the story along to his parents, and his father was deeply embarrassed. My grandparents were warned not to interfere in my love life again. Whenever they bring it up, I just say, "I've got a big dog. You should come home with me." I went on a first date with a woman who casually informed me, "Actually, I'm engaged, but I'm not 100% sure he's the one. I'm going on a few dates to see if I feel differently." I immediately asked for the check. After a couple of weeks of chatting, this guy and I met for dinner. In the middle of our conversation, completely unprompted and unrelated to what I was saying, he blurted out, "You know, for this to work, you'll need to be okay sharing yourself. My friends and I like to take turns with women." I was stunned. After a moment of shock and stammering, I said I didn't think it would work, asked for a to-go box, paid for my share, and left. This didn't happen to me, but to a friend who has a beard. He picked up his date, and as they were driving to dinner, she said, "You know, if this is going to work, you'll have to shave that off." Without saying a word, he turned the car around and dropped her back at her house. I had to drive him, and he criticized everything: my car, my driving, my choice of music, and even my silence while I quietly planned my escape. The breaking point came when he said, "My friends really need to meet you. I want them to know you're real." That's when I decided to leave. I drove us and started parallel parking, having years of experience parking in San Francisco. He interjected, "Let me park this for you. Women aren't great at parallel parking." During dinner, he was dismissive toward the female waitstaff. On my way back from the restroom, I bumped into two drunk surfer guys who told me my date was a jerk. We laughed about it, and I returned to the table. As we left, the surfer guys were outside. I said goodbye to them, and my date rudely shouted, "She's with me." I told him to wait while I unlocked the car, but instead drove off, leaving him standing there. The surfers cheered and shouted, "Go, lady, go!" It was a satisfying end to an awful date. On the first date, he seemed nice enough, so I invited him in for coffee. He tried to assault me, but I managed to break his nose. He texted the next day asking if we could pick up where we left off. Shockingly, he worked as a doctor in a women's psychiatric facility and knew where I lived. I moved within 4 weeks. I went on a first date with a military guy who spent much of the evening discussing why Toronto's strippers were better than those in our area. Trying to change the subject, I asked if he participated in any humanitarian work through the military. He bluntly replied, "No. I joined the military to kill people, not help them." I paid my bill, quickly finished my drink, and left in a hurry. He told me I wasn't attractive enough to have such confidence. I was stunned, but the server stepped in, saying, "Girl, get out of here. Your drink is on the house." We met at the restaurant where I had arrived early to secure a table. When she arrived, we greeted each other and I helped her with her chair. The server asked if we'd like drinks or to hear the specials. She picked up the menu, asked for the wine list without glancing at it, and then stared at me. "How much money do you make?" she asked, enunciating every word. Confused, I replied, "Excuse me?" She repeated the question slowly and deliberately. The server looked uncomfortable. I thanked the server for their help, apologized to my date, and walked out. On our first date, we went bowling. At one point, I turned around and saw him going through my phone. That felt a bit premature. He arrived 45 minutes late to pick me up, and while I let it slide due to bad weather, things went downhill fast. At the coffee shop, I removed my jacket, and his first comment was, "Oh, I see you brought your A game, or should I say D game," referring to my chest. I'm petite but curvier than expected for my frame. Even people at nearby tables stopped to stare at him. He was a mutual acquaintance. At the restaurant, he ordered our meals, and while we waited, he joked, "First, I'll eat this meal, then I'll eat you out." I laughed, assuming he was nervous and not thinking clearly. Later, when the waitress asked if we wanted more drinks, he said, "Bring us something strong." I declined, explaining that I had to drive and just asked for a soda. He responded, "Don't be stupid. You think I'll sleep with you once and let you leave? You'll stay the night." The waitress looked at me like I was crazy for staying. When I asked him to stop making inappropriate remarks, he apologized and things were calm for about 10 minutes. Then, mid-conversation, he blurted out, "You know what? I can't control myself anymore. Either we leave now or I'll fuck you on this table." I excused myself to the restroom while he protested that we needed to leave. Instead, I went to the waitress, paid for the meal, and walked out without another word. While we were having the typical getting-to-know-you chat over drinks, I mentioned that my car had been stolen the previous night. Her immediate response was, "Don't you just hate black people?" I had never even mentioned who took it. I left right then and there. After great online conversations, we decided to meet in person. He arrived wearing a Bluetooth headset with a small LED light showing it was active. He kept it on throughout drinks. Finally, I worked up the courage to ask if he could take it off during dinner. Smiling confidently, he replied, "Don't worry. You have my complete attention. This isn't a phone headset, it's a camera." We had chatted online beforehand, and at the time I was a smoker. I told him, and he assured me it wasn't an issue since he smoked too. We arranged to meet at Starbucks. As soon as we met, his first words were, "Hi. By the way, when I said I smoke, I meant meth." I immediately said, "Oh, bye," turned around and walked away. On our first date at a Japanese restaurant, she asked me my zodiac sign. When I told her I was a Scorpio, she leaned across the table and slapped me hard across the face. Stunned, I managed to mouth, "What?" She glared and declared, "I never date Scorpios." I went to the restroom, and by the time I returned, she was gone and had paid the bill. While discussing pets, I mentioned my cat. She responded by saying that if we were to continue dating, I'd need to get rid of him because she didn't like cats. At first, I thought she was joking. Who would demand that on a first date? But she was serious and upset that I wasn't taking her request seriously. I didn't leave, though. I was in the middle of my fettuccine Alfredo, and I wasn't about to scrape it into a doggy bag like a barbarian. She called an Uber. I haven't had many bad dates, but this was the worst. I'm willing to make reasonable compromises for the right person, but my cat is non-negotiable. I invited a guy I met on a dating site to my house. When I opened the door, the first thing he said was that he could kill me if he wanted to, and warned me never to meet strangers from the internet again. Thankfully, my two male roommates, who knew he was coming, overheard him from the kitchen and chased him out of the house immediately. Within 10 minutes of meeting him, he started making inappropriate sexual comments and joking about following me home to stalk me if I rejected him. I managed to get out safely with the help of a bartender, who let me slip out through the back door.